Good evening to everyone. Certainly good to see you here tonight, and I'm thankful for the opportunity that we have to be together and to worship again in spirit and in truth. I was able to go to a birthday party today for a 1-year-old. My great niece Willow is a year old, and if you haven't been to a year-old's birthday party in a while, you don't know what you're missing. I don't know if she'll remember much of what happened, but there were a lot of folks there to celebrate with her, and we're certainly happy for her, and not just for her, but for all our little ones. We're so happy to be blessed with the little ones that we do have, and I appreciate the parents that are doing their very best to bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. I know that every now and then they get a little rambunctious. And sometimes people will say to me, Tim, I'm sorry that my child did this or that during the service. Most of the time you're telling on yourself, because I don't even notice. The only time I really notice is if it just keeps going on and on. Or if something just unusual happens. I was preaching one time, and little boy got into some trouble, and his dad picked him up. He happened to pick him up this way where his head was back here, and he was being carried out of the auditorium, and he reached his arms back and yelled, "Somebody save me!" Well, that's kind of hard to overcome, but we appreciate our parents and our young ones and their good efforts. We had 18 individuals who turned in their Bible reading today, and we had a total of 402 chapters from God's Word read by those 18. That's wonderful. I want to encourage us all to get involved in that good effort. Parents, get your children involved. Let them write their number down and put it into the box. But let's make sure we're doing our best to spend time in God's Word. We have a gospel meeting that's coming up. Our elders have done a good job of reminding us of that. And we have an opportunity to invite others to come and be with us. That Sunday, Lord willing, April the 10th is going to be our Friends and Family Day. So we can start with them and invite them to come and be with us on that good day as we start that gospel meeting. We're going to have an opportunity to pass out door hangers in the community coming up April 2nd. And we're looking forward to that good work. We're going to be trying to have our 24 hours of continuous prayer. And Lord willing, we will put Terry's address in the bulletin. You can send those notes to him and encourage him about the opportunity to come and preach for us. So a good opportunity, Lord willing, is coming our way with that gospel meeting. Tonight, I want to talk for a little while about the work of visitation. Certainly a huge part of the work of any congregation of God's people is the idea of visiting others. And I want us to understand that when the Bible talks about making a visit, it's more than just a social call. That can be important, and sometimes that may be all that is needed. But visiting, according to the Scriptures, is a little bit more than that. It carries with it the act of looking for the needs of someone else or of ministering to their needs. Look at a few of the places where this term visit is used in the Scriptures. For instance, in Matthew chapter 25 and verses 35 and 36, where Jesus is speaking to those who were on the right hand, those who had prepared themselves for eternity, those who were serving the Lord. He said to them, "For I was hungered, and you gave me meat. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in, naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came unto me." Specifically, he mentions the idea of being sick, and you visited me. But when you look at all of this, you can see that there was a need. Someone was hungry. He didn't just tell them, well, be filled. Someone was cold. It didn't say just be warm. No, there was action that was taken. There were needs, and those needs were met. In Acts chapter 15 and verse 36, you find Paul talking to Barnabas about the opportunity to go back where the church had been planted on their first missionary journey. And as they discussed this, we read, and some days after, Paul said unto Barnabas, let us go again and visit our brethren in every city where we have preached the word of the Lord, and see how they do. Folks, they weren't just going to go back and say, hey, good to see you. No, they were going to see what the needs were in those congregations with those brethren, so that if there was a need, they could help. They could minister unto them. And again, in James chapter 1 and verse 27, where we're told pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world. Here it's very clear that to visit, well, it's much more than just a social call. It is seeing the needs that someone has and ministering unto them, taking care of them. And so when we think about the work of visitation, let's think about it as being more than just saying, hey, how you doing? But let's look at it as an opportunity to minister and to meet needs of our brethren and those that are interested in the church and those that we come in contact with. You know, there is a great need for visitation work today. And when I talk about this, I am not trying to say that no visitation is going on from this congregation. I don't believe that's the case at all. I know that there are folks who are visiting and who are meeting the needs of fellow members. But we need to continue in this effort. We need to encourage each other to grow in this work. And so there's a great need in our world for visitation work today. It's because there are so many in our world that need encouragement. This world has a way of wearing on people, bringing folks down. It's an effort to keep that optimistic attitude. So we need to encourage each other. Visitation is one way to be able to do that. There are many people who need to know someone is thinking about them. Someone cares about them. Because the devil is always going to be telling folks, you're insignificant. You don't matter. No one is thinking about you. You're just a number. But we need to let people know that we care. And through visitation, we are able to do that kind of thing. There are so many that are in need of assistance. That's why we need visitation work. Galatians 6 and verse 10, we're reminded, as we have therefore opportunity, let us do good unto all men, especially unto them who are of the household of faith. And so we want to help those who need assistance. John chapter 5 and verses 5 through 7, we see an instance where there's an individual who feels great loneliness. He has no one. Visitation is a way where we can let people know they are not all alone. It's one of the saddest passages, I think, in the scriptures. Here is Jesus at this pool in Bethesda, where there is a man who has been lame for 38 years. Folks, if my stomach's upset for 38 minutes, I think I'm in a dire situation. Can you imagine 38 years? This was the place where there was the pool that they believed was troubled by an angel coming down. And the idea was whoever got into the water first after it was troubled would be healed of whatever ailment they had. Well, Jesus comes, he sees this man, and he asks him, "Wilt thou be made whole?" And this man who couldn't walk, this impotent man, answered him, "Sir, I have no man." Now, I know it goes on. It says, when the water is troubled, to put me into the pool, but while I'm coming, another steppeth down before me. But here's this man. Picture him. He needs help. And he says, I don't have anyone. I have no man. And I just wonder, how many in our communities, how many in our neighborhoods feel that way? I don't have anyone. We know that it should not be that way. It cannot be that way in the Lord's church. Visitation, caring for each other, seeing to each other's needs goes a long way in helping people to understand that they are not all alone. And of course, there are so many that need the gospel. Jesus came to seek and to save that which is lost. Visitation work helps us to reach out to those who are searching for truth. And it also helps us to reach out to those who have fallen away, those who are growing weak in the faith and need to be built up. Remember in James 5, verses 19 and 20, the last two verses of that little letter tell us, "Brethren, if any of you do err from the truth and one convert him, let him know that he which converteth the sinner from the error of his way shall save a soul from death and shall hide a multitude of sins." Folks, I think it's really easy for us to see that there is a great need for visitation work in the Lord's church. And when you think about it, there's just so much that can be done under this idea of visitation, because it can be accomplished in so many different ways. There really is work for everyone. Certainly there are those personal visits, and I think most of the time when people think about visitation work, that's what they think of, going to someone's house or their apartment or whatever it may be and meeting them and visiting some with them and seeing to their needs perhaps. And certainly that's a large part of it. You think about visiting the hospitals or visiting the sick or the elderly or the lonely, visiting the weak, visiting those who have visited us, visitors to services, or visiting newcomers to the area, visiting new members. And I'm sure there are others. But that's certainly a way for us to be involved in a visitation work. But some of us might not be able to do that kind of work. Can I still be involved in a good work? Like, yes, I can. How? Well, I've got a phone. I like to talk on the phone. I don't personally. You may be one who likes to talk on the phone. And you might be very good at that. And in that way, you can accomplish much of what we talked about in encouraging and in helping, supporting, by sending cards. Congregation here, I think, does a wonderful job of sending those cards. And I'll be honest with you, for a long time, when I was young, especially as a young preacher, I thought, you're wasting your dollar. Now it's $5 or whatever it is to send a card, not just $1. But why? People read it and think, yeah, that goes in the file 13, just that cylinder down there. But you get sick one time, or you go through trouble sometime, and you be the one who gets those cards, and it'll change the way you think. Because it just is a way of letting us know you're being thought of. You're being prayed for. You matter, and I feel for you as you are going through whatever it is you're going through. And it encourages. And I go to visit, and you can see on someone's dresser or wherever they get their makeup on, or wherever it is they want, up on the wall or whatever. They've got the cards just sitting there. Sometimes it's a pile. Sometimes they're standing. Sometimes they're taped to the wall. And before I leave, look at all the cards that I've gotten. And every time they look at them, they're reminded someone's thinking about me. Great way to encourage and build up and let someone know that they matter and they're not alone. And then there's the idea, of course, of help that can be given. And that's a big part of this work. Seeing what needs to be done and then doing it. That's visitation. Well, I wanted to share these thoughts with you about the need for visitation and visitation work because, Lord willing, in the month to come, we are going to start a visitation work here at Alkire Road. And I want to encourage as many as can to be involved in this effort. And as I said just a moment ago, in these different ways, there really is work for everyone to be involved in. Now, here's the way we're going to try and do it. We're going to have 4 visitation teams. In doing it this way, we're hoping that it doesn't become a burden to anyone and we don't burn out anyone. Because you're going to be placed on one of those 4 teams, and what we will do is have your team meet just once a month. Team 1 will meet on the first week of the month. Team 2 will meet on the second week. Can anybody figure out when Team 3 will meet? It's not complicated. But we will meet and we will get our assignments. And we'll have a week then to complete those assignments. And we're not going to ask anybody to do anything that they are not comfortable in doing. We may have someone who visits our services, and we'll want to visit them in that week that follows, to thank them and let them know that we appreciate them coming and encourage them to come again. You might be a person who's, I'm not really good with new folks. That's not what I would like to do. We're not going to make you do that. But we want to give everyone an opportunity to work. Now, we have 4 men who have volunteered. Well, I asked them and they volunteered to be the captains of these 4 teams. And they are Richie Bowe, Tony Dunnigan, my son Jim Hatfield, and I only say that because I don't want you to think it's my dad, Jim Hatfield, and then Craig Ross. And these 4 are going to be the captains of each of these teams. They'll be given the cards and they'll be giving out those assignments. You'll be meeting with them, working together with them. And we will do this for a period of time, maybe 6 months, 8 months, and then we'll switch up the teams so that we get to know more people and work together. And hopefully, as we do this kind of thing, when it becomes your opportunity to meet, your week to meet, to get your assignment, maybe we can have, not every time, but some of those times, a little fellowship together for that team. And we can encourage each other in this work and get to know each other and then do the work that week. So we're not trying to burden anyone, but we want everyone to be involved. Everyone that would like to be involved in this kind of work. Now, I want to share with you, with the time that we have left, just some things to keep in mind, some things to remember when visiting anyone, general things in particular. Let's see here. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Here we go. Okay. First, general visitation principles. And I know that you're going to say, Tim, this is just common sense. And I think you're right. But there's something I've learned about common sense. It's not as common as we think it is. And so we want to just help each other to become better at visiting. And so, as we think about this work, in particular, going to make a personal visit, first of all, you go with a partner. We're not going to try to send anyone out by themselves, but you go with someone. Remember, Jesus sent his disciples out 2 by 2. That's just good common sense. And so you send someone. It can be your spouse. It could be one of your children. It could be a friend here from the congregation. But we'll go with a partner. Most visits should be brief. Some visits might only last no longer, literally, than a minute or 2. We'll talk about that more later, but just a minute or 2. No longer than 25 or 30 minutes at the most. Folks, it's always better to leave 5 minutes before that time limit gets there to where they're not sorry that you left. It's a lot better for them to say, "Oh, do you have to go?" Or than when you leave, "I didn't think they'd ever leave." You don't want that. We're not trying to wear people out. Just a little bit of our time. We need to have a genuine love and appreciation for people. That's part of visitation work. We care. That's what we want to express. We want to be enthusiastic. And here we're talking about being enthusiastic about the church. You go to make a visit, it's not the time to talk about how awful the preacher is, how he doesn't know how to stop, or whatever it is. You be enthusiastic. We don't dominate the conversation. I don't know how many times I've gone to visit and people have said, "I'm so sorry. I haven't let you say anything." I always say, "Hey, you have to listen to me all the time. I can listen to you." And that's what we want to do. Don't get personal with your questions. "Hey, by the way, how much did you pay for that truck? How much is this sofa? Well, you gave what for that dog?" You don't need to do that. Don't get personal. Find common ground. You can do that by looking around. People usually display things that they're interested in. Might be grandchildren. Who doesn't want to talk about their grandchildren? Might be a hobby that they're involved in or work. But find that common ground. Offer help that may be needed. You need to be willing to do that. If 2 sisters go to visit a woman who's just come out of the hospital, and they notice they've got dirty dishes in the sink, and there's clothes that need to be laundered, or what, and kids that are running around, and they go and they burn up her time, and then they leave, don't do anything. She'd have probably been better off if they didn't come. We don't want that to be the case. I remember once I went to visit a older couple, and as I was talking with them, kept hearing this chirp. And before I got ready to leave, I said something about their smoke detector. The battery was low, and she said, "Is that what that is? I have been looking for a cricket all day long." So I changed the battery for them. Not a big deal. But if there's something that needs to be done, let's do that. And if we can't do it that time, let's schedule a time when it can be done. And then, of course, leave the door open for further contact so that more visits can be made, more encouragement can be given. You think about making a visit to the hospital. And I realize that we haven't been able to do that very much during this COVID period, and hopefully those limitations will be lifted before very long here. And when we're able to do that, again, be brief. You're not going to people are sick in the hospital. They can't carry on conversations for an hour. You're brief. You follow the signs on the door. I know that's probably a simple idea, but if the door says no visitors, that means us. If it says check at the nurse's station, you do that. If it says that you've got to put on a mask and a gown, you do that before you go to visit. It could be for your protection. More likely, it's for the person's protection, to keep them from catching anything else. But you follow the signs. And when hospital work has to be done, you leave. You don't keep them from doing what needs to be done when they're there. And you don't share horror stories. Somebody's in the hospital and they tell you what they're there for. Oh, my Uncle Joe, he had that. He didn't last 3 days. I don't want to hear that. They don't need to be talked to about the hospital. This hospital, I wouldn't take my dog to this hospital. Who's your doctor? That doctor? Well, I wouldn't even let him operate on it. No, they need encouragement, not the horror stories. We want it to be brief, and we want it to be an encouragement to them. What about visiting someone who's a visitor to services? Well, here's one of those meetings or visits that could only be a minute long, perhaps. Because here's someone who's come to us. We want to go to them and just knock on the door and say, thank you. Thank you for coming to be with us. You may not even get in the door, and that's okay. It's not the goal to go in the door and spend an hour with them or half hour. It's the goal to thank them and encourage them to come back. You might take some good information with you about the congregation to leave with them. But again, just a little bit of time to let people know that we appreciate them and that we're interested in them. And we want them to come and be with us. You visit someone who maybe has grown weak in the faith. Again, doesn't need to be a long visit, just a little bit of time. But we want to let someone know that they're missed. You know, it's not uncommon in congregations, or for me to hear of congregations where someone has been away for 6 weeks, 3 months, a year, and no one has checked on them. Now, I know that we all have a responsibility to the Lord. But what do you suppose that message is to that person, even though no one has said it? If no one has checked, it's pretty easy to get the idea no one really cares. And we don't want anyone to feel that way. And so we want to let them know that we care about them. You are missed when you are not here. And you might find out the reason why. There might be a reason. Maybe they've had to be out of town because of family matters. Maybe someone has been sick. Maybe the car hasn't been working. And if there's something that's keeping them from it, from coming to services that we can help with, we'll come get you. But again, we want to encourage. These are just some ideas to keep in mind as we think about this work that we want to be involved in. But as I mentioned, we're going to try to start this work next month, following our gospel meeting. Lord willing, next Sunday evening, we'll give every member a card, and you can let us know if you want to be involved in this work. I know that you can be involved in visitation work without being a part of this program, and if that's what you want to do, that is fine. But we just want to put this effort forward to try and help the congregation, to help our community, and to do the work that Christ would have us to do in caring for each other, in caring for souls, and helping people on their way to heaven. Visitation work is a very important work in the church, and we need to be involved in it because we care and we want to do the will of our Lord. I hope tonight, as we've talked about these things, that if you're not a Christian, that you've been impressed with the idea that we care about people, because that's what this work is about. It's about people. We want folks to know that we care. But even more, we want them to know that Jesus cares and that salvation is found in Him We want to go to heaven, and we want to help to take as many people there with us as we can. And so if you're here tonight and you've not yet obeyed the gospel, we want to encourage you to come to Christ and put him on in baptism for the forgiveness of sins. If you have, but you've fallen away and you need to come back, we want to pray with you and for you. So friend, if you're subject in any way to heaven's invitation, please come as together we stand and sing.